Hey, Starseeds. Hey, Collective. Welcome. Welcome to a new year. Even though life isn't working in linear time, life is actually cyclical, but welcome to a new year. I thought I would start with some content that one of my friends suggested I would talk about. And I figured as an African American, as a black-bodied female, I have experience with this, and also as someone who has studied African Americans in undergrad in anthropology, I figured I would also do some research, and I was reading Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennet. I looked at some of his material just to get a sense of our history before the Mayflower, basically before slavery, before chattel slavery in America. And so, yeah, I have some very interesting content today. And the topic is, who are we? Who are African Americans, right? Where do we come from? Who are our ancestors? And this will be the first part of a couple parts. There'll be some collaborations, and this is important to go into because we want to really see who we are. We want to reshape, re-identify ourselves as Black women, as Black men. We want to remember who we truly are. My friend was talking about how the Black community can view sometimes Black men as good for nothing, right? Good for nothing, ain't shit. And that's not who we truly are. We truly are kings and queens. So let's get into it. As an African American, I've always felt like it was important to know my history. I feel like as a colored person, we should all know our histories. Our histories didn't start with chattel slavery, nor did it begin with Adam and Eve. The first hominid, the Australopithecus afarensis, came out of South Africa. Ancient Egypt cosmology discusses life began around the Nile. Once we start looking into the culture and life before the Mayflower, we begin to find our strength, our power. We begin to find our soul again. Finding our roots again is what will become that pivotal point. It's finding our roots is so important. Where Black women's new perspective of Black men will shift. Where Black women's perspective of Black men will shift. Where Black men's view of their own self will shift. When we think about ancient Egypt, when we think about the states of Sudan, it has been proven that these groups were advanced. Ancient Egyptians were so advanced that it's almost impossible to understand their technologies now. It's almost impossible to recreate what they've created so long ago. Their languages were so complex. Linguists are still having a difficulty translating it. Understand that it was very common to be Black back then. Very common. And it was unnatural to be white. The Blacks were the majority and the whites were the minority. In the beginning, the leading race of the Western Hemisphere was a Black race. Ethiopians were the spiritual father of the ancient Egyptians. Every religious practice derived from Africa. Thousands of years before the pharaohs, we were there cultivating barley cereals, pottery, weapons, and so on. Think about that. Think about that. If we fathered the ancient Egyptians, if we were the ancient Egyptians, then we are still those people. No matter the colors of black, reddish brown, and yellow, great scholars have proven that we are these people. We come from royalty. We come from an advanced elite group who contain a miraculous DNA. Think about the chipmunk. I read this in Cybernetics. Think about the chipmunk, how when it's born in spring, and yet in December, it knows to collect nuts. It knows to collect acorns. It collects them. How does it know that? How does it know that? Did someone tell it that? No, they just knew. How? Because there are instructions in the DNA, right? The universe, Krishna, God, the Supreme, whatever you want to call it, there are instructions given in the DNA of how to live, what to look for, how to survive, how to thrive. In the same way, would you not say that humans have instructions in our DNA? And if you would say we have instructions in our DNA, would you not say that it is passed on, it is hereditary? Because given what our ancestors have been through, would then shape our DNA a certain way? Okay, so if that may be true, then if we go back to the ancient Egyptians, if we go back to the states of Sudan, if we go back to the fathers of Ethiopia, would you not say that their power, their instructions, their blood doesn't run through our DNA? Do you see what I'm saying? We are charged through our DNA, and that's why it's important to know where you're from, because when you realize where you're from and what you're a part of, you can take back your power, you can take back your sense of self. Your soul has come here in this body because it is powerful, and you use that power to live this life the way you're supposed to live this life. I just wanted to take a second because I feel like that's a strong message that I just gave. And I want to break it down. I gave you guys some facts that I found in that book Before the Mayflower by Lerone, Bennet. I love that book. I've been studying that book since I was 18, so like for a decade now. I love it because it talks about a time when things were different, The Australopithecus afarensis, the Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo robustus, all came out of Africa, South Africa, migrated up north and out of Africa. At that time, it was different, Pangea, all of the countries were closer. Homo Neanderthal, went towards Europe, and over time, because of the climate, the phenotype has shifted, right? If someone is living in the mountains, in the cold mountains, in caves, they're not like by the equator anymore. So their skin may flare up, their skin changes. Their nose may become more narrow so that they're not inhaling all of the cold air, right? The hair may come down to cover the neck, to warm themselves, right? So you see how climate is also a factor of phenotype of change, as well as the opposite. If you live near the equator, your nose should be wider so that you can breathe better, right? You're running from a cheetah, from a lion. Your nose needs to open up more. Your nostrils need to be more wider. Your hair will go up instead of down because it's hot, You don't need anything on your neck. Your skin will become darker because the darker you are, the more vitamin D you need, the more melanin you have, right? Melanin is just a factor of the element. It's something beautiful to take pride in, because it means that we take in more of the sun, we take in more of the light, right? There's nothing wrong with that, right? Black, Krishna means the all attractive. Black is attractive, Every color is in the color of black, Black absorbs and pulls all. This is powerful, I remember in anthropology, they taught us how they played with the words and made black into something dirty and impure. Black is not impure. Black is the all attractive. So when you think about your DNA, you think about your ancestors who come here before you, it's okay if you're not into ancestor worship. You don't have to be to understand this. All you have to understand is that there are instructions in our DNA, just like there are instructions in a chipmunk's DNA. And it tells us what to do, what to look out for, how to live, how to survive, and where we come from. Now, how do we get in tune with this? You can meditate and, do the whole spiritual shebang if you want to. You could definitely get closer to your ancestors through meditation. If you learn to sound your mind, you can get closer to self. And within the self is all of the answers, right? Because God is in the self, right? And our ancestors are in us as well, running through our bloodlines. Now, what does this have to do with the modern Black community? Well, it's important to know that we are not the product of chattel slavery. What is chattel slavery? Chattel slavery is the type of slavery they enacted in the America. They enacted a slavery where they dehumanized us. This dehumanizing process was done in America. It completely broke us down. Blacks being scattered to the four corners of the earth was our curse, right? We were cursed to be spread to the four corners of the earth. But this chattel slavery completely stripped us from everything, that we forgot. We forgot that we were the Black merchants in India, the Black merchants in China and in Europe. There were some Black slaves in Europe and Asia. There were Black generals in Japan, Blacks in Venice, Europe, and the deserts of Arabia. Do we forget that the Prophet Muhammad was of Black blood? Do we forget that famous poet in Arabia had a slave Black mom? How do we forget these things? We forget it through chattel slavery. It consisted of lynches and castrations. It stripped our ancestors' identity. It stripped the form of religion, of language, their entire culture, right? Culture is understood as language, religion, customs. We were stripped from all of these things. Our ancestors' identity was completely ruined. They broke family ties. This hardened the Black woman. They stripped her from mothering her children. They murdered her husband. And all had to witness this, right? During the picnics, excuse my language, but pick a nigger picnics, when white people would wear their finery. If you look this up online, you will see they are wearing their finery, and a Black man is being lynched. He gets castrated and lynched, and the Black women have to stand there and watch. All had to be there to witness the lynching and castration of Black men. They would even dig a hole in the ground and lay a pregnant black woman on the floor and whip her back, right? All of the surgeries they did to black women, they did it with no anesthesia. They saved those drugs for the white woman. So when we think of chattel slavery, we have to think about our ancestors. We come from kings and queens. So many people killed themselves on the way to America. I read of women putting nails, grabbing the nails out of the ship and pushing it in them so that when they get raped, it would then kill them and also hurt the person that's raping them. A lot of people don't realize that these kings and queens, some people have never even lifted a finger, yet now they're pushed into a new world, stripped from their identity, from their name, from their family, and now forced to do some hard field work that they've never done. There's this prince from Guinea. His name is Abdul Rahman Ibrahim Asor, and he was captured in West Africa in 1788. He was sold into U.S. slavery. He was enslaved on a Mississippi plantation. Abdul Rahman was a highly educated aristocrat. He was a prince. He was a prince, and yet he was on a Mississippi plantation, right? Imagine what other ancestors like Abdul Rahman we have. The funny story, well, it's not funny, but most interesting story about him is he never gave up. He never gave up. He continued to fight for his freedom. He continued to tell the world who he was. And at the end, he did become a free man. And it's inspiring. But a lot of our ancestors did not become free men. And a lot of them were princes and princesses and kings and queens. So who are we as Black people? We are kings and queens. Our bloodlines are royal. Think about Europe. Think about the royalty bloodlines and how preserved they are. This is us. Yet our bloodlines weren't preserved. Our bloodlines were tapered with. They stripped us from our bloodline. And it's up to us to remind ourselves who we are. And when you remind yourself who you are, you then start to act a certain way, right? Like before, I went to an Empress meditation. And in that meditation, we were told to embody our Empress self. So do this with me. Close your eyes. Imagine your throne. How does it look? How does your throne look? Is it made of gold or silver? What does it have on it? Does it have jewels on it? I don't know. You go as deep as you want with this. Imagine sitting on your throne. What are you wearing? Your Majesty, what do you want to wear? Look down at yourself. See your garment. What are you wearing? What's on your feet? Are you wearing any jewels? Any accessories? How are you sitting? Are you sitting upright? Are you relaxed on your throne? What about your crown? How does that look? How do you sit to hold up a crown? how do you walk when you have a crown on your head? You must have an upright position to hold that heavy crown. You never look down, because then your crown would fall, wouldn't it? It's important to imagine yourself this way, in your truest form, because this is what we come from. This is who we come from. A king and a queen does not just jump up for anybody. They sit there on their beautiful throne and assert power that way. You know, I was just talking to my partner about this yesterday. It's important for Black men to embody their king energy. You don't just respond to anyone. You don't just get loud for anyone. They have to be a certain kind of threat for you to get off of your throne. You know, because you have guards. Guards take care of that. Just wave your hand and you allow the universe to take care of that. You allow karma to take care of that. You don't have to jump up. You don't have to unless it's a sudden threat for you. Then, of course, by all means, do it. But in the same way, if a king is sitting there on his beautiful throne, what about his queen? What about his queen? How is the queen sitting, right? Is she beside him? When you look at ancient Egypt, you look at all the statues, there's always a strong woman sitting right beside her queen, right? And it's important for women, Black women, to remember our position, right? Our position is to support the king. Our position is to love him, to support him, you know, not to castrate him, not to punish him. You know, I've been reading this book, and we could get into this another time, but it's called The Queen's Code, and it talks about how women these days continue to castrate men, but men have to understand that this has been programmed into women to castrate men with our words. Men are very sensitive beings when it comes to women's words and what women do to them. We truly affect them. And when we realize that how much we affect them, when we realize how much power we have over men, we should utilize that to bring them up, to empower them, to help them, not to put them down, not to step on them. Right? We must drop our weapons. Drop our weapons and talk with love and acceptance and support, right? Punishing, castrating men isn't gonna give us what we want or what we need. If anything, now we're both in a hole. So we all need to rise up and do better for each other ultimately. But we also, need to do better for ourselves. So with those bloodlines, those royal bloodlines, if we take back our identity, that's a step towards understanding the position of the Black man. One step towards understanding the position of the Black woman, understanding our relationship with each other, right? The Black family. And I keep using this word Black because I love this word. I love this word Black. Phenotypically, if you look at my skin, it's not even a brown color, a chocolate brown. You know, when you put the color brown to me, I'm lighter than that. But I call myself a Black woman. And you know why? Because I pride myself of my ancestors. Being Black is a beautiful thing. We are the first. We are the first. So I don't mean that. I hope that no one is feeling some type of way by hearing me say Black, Black, Black. And I also hope that if some people are listening that are not Black aren't getting aggravated at me, because it is nothing wrong with being prideful of who you are. If I can be prideful of who I am, it doesn't have to threaten you. I am not trying to threaten anyone that's not of the Black community. I am trying to empower and raise the vibrations of the Black community, because it is about time that we remember who we are and where we come from. It is about time to remember that we were the first astrologers, mathematicians. We were the first linguists, the first travelers, the first merchants. We influenced Asia, Europe, Japan. We influenced India. We have to remember who we are. We have to remember who we come from before chattel slavery. We have to shake these chains off. And I'm not saying that I'm totally above this. I also struggle. But together, we struggle together, we persevere together, we will do better. We have to come together. And I hope that the next time I talk about this topic, it will be with a collaboration of some Black men, so that we can hear their perspectives, because I can't talk for Black men, for the modern Black man. I can only talk about things I've studied about Black men, which isn't very effective, because when we think about the mass incarceration and the fear that they live in and day out, not saying Black women don't have this fear, but I think it's on a different scale. Black men are targeted, murdered, castrated, lynched, Of course, Black women are raped, and Black women are also murdered. I'm not taking that away from us women. I'm just saying that in a family, if we weren't raised in a broken home, we would understand the significance of a father, of a mother, of a sister, of a brother. And a lot of us were stripped from that family relation, family customs that we once had. And so, yeah, I am really excited to continue to explore this topic about the Black man, the Black woman, about our ancestors. And I'm excited to inspire whoever is listening to learn your history, learn the difference between slavery and chattel slavery. Slavery that was done in Jamaica, that was done in Brazil, that was done in Dominican Republic is very different than the slavery that was done in America. Jamaicans were allowed a free day, Sunday, and they were also given land to garden their own. They could go to the city and sell what they cropped. They could sell their crops. The slaves in Haiti, if the French master, mated and had a child with a slave woman, he would then allow that child to be considered a mixed race. She could then buy her own freedom. They would marry their slave if they had a child with the slave. There's some freedom there. In America, if he raped her and she then had his child, that child would still be a slave of that master, right? This is a different type of form, very crucial form of slavery. And I'm not saying, that, oh my God, the only ones that really had slavery were African Americans. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it is important to look into the history and to understand how things affect people. And when you look into chattel slavery, you see that this is the most vicious form of slavery that was done to our ancestors here in America. And I'm also reminding you of this so that you don't blame yourself. Please don't blame yourself for where you are. All I ask is that you look in the mirror and see where you are. And then from there, you start to meditate and embody that Empress energy, embody that Emperor energy. Remember where you came from. Look up your ancestors. Look up Abdul Rahman. He is such a beautiful man, and he had strength. He had strength, and he fought for his freedom. He reminded America that he is a scholar. He knows many languages. He studied. He is a prince. He is of royal bloodline. He refused for them to treat him the way they did. And yet they continued to treat him that way. And he continued to fight and fight. And actually, I believe he had like 10 children in Mississippi. And just think of that. Think of how many royals were enslaved. Think of their children and their children's children. Do you not think you don't have any royal blood running in your veins? We have to remember the power of our DNA. And I think this is the most important message that I'm trying to convey here. The ancient Egyptians were spiritual beings. They were superhuman, The only ones that still are kind of superhuman are the Australian Aborigines, and that's because they're so closed off. They a lot of them mix in with the modern world, but a lot of them don't. And if you want to look into that, please look into that. It's so interesting. But we can get into it. I don't want to get super anthropological with you guys. Oh, it's my thing, and I'll just start ranting. And I'm trying to close this off. And I want to close it off by reminding you to tap into your DNA, into our miraculous DNA, and to look at the position of the people in our lives. Fix the family ties and the relations. Uplift each other. Remind him that he is a king. Remind her that she is a queen. Not just that, right? We have to embody it. We have to enact it, right? True wisdom is practical. It's when you're actually doing it. So figure out how you could do it. Peace, blessings. Dear indigos, starseeds, earth angels, the collective, thank you for being here with me. I love you guys. I love the support. Thank you. Yeah, peace. This is a new year, and I started this journey, because the universe encouraged me to do it. And I just pray that I can bring you guys relative content for the situations that we're going through as a resident of New York, as a Black girl who has grown up in the inner cities of Lower East Side of Elias, Manhattan. I feel like it is my duty to be here, to show up. And I thank you guys for showing up and listening in, tuning in to what this little girl has to say. So let's just continue to work on ourselves and to reimagine ourselves in the position of who we truly are. And let's also uplift each other, because as we help each other, we heal ourselves. Let's remember to heal the community. All right, guys, until next time.